All right, so happy Monday to you guys. The first transformation that we're going to look at is a reflection transformation. So let's define what a reflection transformation is, and then we're going to go through. I'm going to show you guys how to do it on tracing paper and how to do it on the coordinate plane so that you guys can work through the next 2 days in your packet and drawing those reflections and knowing some properties of those. So today is the 14th. So we're going to look at reflections. So I would just title it Reflections. Okay. So when we think about reflections, a lot of time when we talk about reflection, we talk about something that we see in a mirror. And so, or on something that's like glassy, like a lake or anything like that. So a reflection is, describes what we see from that reflection. So let's define that. And once again, I would use your highlighter. It's a mirror image or flip of a pre-image over a reflecting line. Oh, goodness. Getting ahead of myself here. So the reflection is the image that we get. So remember, we have our pre-image is the what we start with, and the image is the changed or reflected picture. So there's some notation that we need to make sure that we know when it comes to reflections. Okay, so let's write this down. So we have standard notation, and you guys are going to see this in your packet. So I want to make sure that you guys know what it means. So when we have this little r here, that stands for reflection. A subscript letter, that tells me what line I am reflecting over. Then we've got our pre-image. So our pre-image is always going to be what's in the parentheses. And our image is the image that's what we get as we are reflecting it. So the R, as I said, is the reflection. The S here is what line it is. So the line of reflection. What's in the parentheses is the pre-image. And what's after it with the primes, remember those are called primes, that is the image after reflection. Okay, so if we look at this triangle, so this is A, B, C. I'll let you guys catch up here for a minute. So we have ABC. So that's our pre-image. I know it's a pre-image because there's no primes. So the line that I'm going to reflect over is this line that I drew here. I'm going to label it S. So what I know is that this image, when I reflect over it, it ends up being a flip. So how I know that is because if I take this point, I know that A prime is exactly the same distance from the reflecting line as the pre-image was. So I could take my ruler, I'm going to eyeball it for our purposes right now, and so A prime is going to be over here. B prime, here's it's about that far. So I knew that it was on this line. I did that on purpose to make sure that I have somewhat of a easier way to reflect it. So it's about the same distance here. So now I can connect these, and what you're going to do is you're going to use a ruler. Okay. Oh, mine isn't a very good reflection, but it will be the same exact picture as a reflection. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. Okay. So I want you to have your packet out to page 5. Okay, I'll let you catch up here for a second. And open up to your packets to page 5. You also need a piece of tracing paper. So why don't we pause it, and Mr. Duncan can hand you guys a piece of tracing paper, and then we'll start again. Also, you need a pencil. Pencils are incredibly important for this, especially when we're working with tracing paper, okay? So page 5, we've got our, just some of the things that I've already talked about. When we talk about notation, oops, forgot an L there. Point A is what I was reflecting, so it's the pre-image. A prime is the result of that reflection. And B is the pre-image, and B prime is the result of that reflection, so that is my image. So line M is my reflecting line, and this is what the notation would look like. So we have our little r, always, that's for reflection, our little m, what our pre-image is in the parentheses, and then it equals A with our prime, okay? So this, remember, apostrophe means prime. So if we were to connect these, what I know is that this distance from here to the reflecting line is the same distance. I also know that it is perpendicular. So we say that M is the perpendicular bisector of A prime, and B prime. So whatever we connect the image to the pre-image. Okay. So what we're going to do is now practice using our tracing paper. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to, I would probably find which side is the rough side. That tends to work better with tracing paper and pencils. Remember, do not use pens. So what we're going to do is I am going to make sure I have enough tracing paper to cover the whole image, pre-image, and the reflecting line. So I'm going to reflect my pre-image DEF over line K, and I'm going to have my images D prime, E prime, F prime. So I am going to just trace over the points on my pre-image. I'm also going to, you can trace the whole reflecting line. You don't have to. You can just trace part of it. You'll get, for now, I would trace the whole thing. But later on, when you guys get more used to doing reflections, you'll figure out little shortcuts that help you. So what we're gonna do, since it's a flip, it's a reflection, now that I've traced the 3 points for my pre-image, I'm going to flip this over. I am going to line up the reflecting line, make sure it's perfect, and then on the back of the tracing paper, I'm going to retrace over the 3 dots on the other side. So what happens is you have now a trace of your pre-image. You have a reflection. So now, since I just did the points, I can draw a nice, neat reflection using a straight edge. So I'm going to connect these points. And then I also need to label my image. So this point corresponds to this point here, so that's going to be D prime. Then this point is closest to the reflecting line, so I know this has to be F prime. And then this point is farther away, so this would be E prime. So if I turn my paper and it goes straight up and down, you can see it really looks like a mirror image of that object, okay? So if you want to pause that for a second, we can go through and make sure everyone has that done, okay? All right. So for the first part, you guys are going to practice just using tracing paper. We're now going to go through and do reflections on the coordinate plane, which coordinate plane reflections are really nice because you don't have to use tracing paper. You can if you want, but you don't have to. It's way neater if we don't. Okay, so I'm going to scoot this up here. So as I said, when we do reflections on the coordinate plane, we don't need tracing paper. So we're going to reflect triangle GHI over the y-axis. Okay, so this is the y-axis. So this is going to be my line of reflection. So I'm going to take every point and I'm going to reflect it over to the other side of the y-axis. So I know that images are the same distance from the line of reflection as the pre-image. So if these points are all on the intersections, it makes it nice and neat. So I know G is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away from the reflecting line. So I know G prime is going to be 6 over from the reflecting line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So -6 here, +6 here. So this is G prime. I'm going to label that so I don't forget. So point I is 1, 2, 3, 4. So I prime will be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then H is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So on that same horizontal line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this would be H prime. So now I'm just going to take my ruler. I'm going to connect all of my points. Voila, we have a reflection over the y-axis. And we have our image. So what I'm going to have you guys do for the rest of the hour is to work on pages. Let me see what pages we have. Pages 6. Finish page 6 for this hour, and then on Wednesday you guys will have to do page 8.